Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today we'll be exploring some really cool stuff. Taoism specifically,
Oh, yeah.
through the lens of Heshang Gong's commentary on the Tao Te Ching.
It's a great commentary to be using, I think, for this.
Yeah.
Really adds an interesting, unique perspective on it.
So we'll be focusing on extracting those key pieces of wisdom, from the Tao Te Ching and how
Yeah.
Heshang Gong interprets them, and hopefully those nuggets of wisdom will resonate with us even today. Thousands of years later, I'm ready to dive in.
Absolutely. Heshang Gong himself is a little bit of a mystery figure, but his understanding of Taoism is really deep. So having that perspective of his on the Tao Te Ching is it's really rich. It's a rich layer to this exploration, and it really gives us a pathway into these teachings that have been around for so long.
So let's start with the heart of it all, Tao.
Okay.
Now, Heshang Gong describes it as the source of everything, the principle behind all existence. But then he says it's nameless and formless. So how can something be the root of everything and yet have no name, no form? It's a bit of a brain twister.
It is a paradox, that's for sure. And a paradox that is central to Taoism.
Yeah.
And to explain this, he uses a comparison, a very striking one, actually. He says the Tao is like an infant before it can speak. There's so much potential in an infant, a whole world of possibilities waiting to unfold, but they haven't yet developed the words to express it.
Yeah.
And in a similar way, the Tao is pure potentiality, the source of all things.
Okay.
Exists before definition, before we give things names and forms.
That's a powerful image. I like that. But how can we as modern people relate to this idea of a formless source in our own lives? It all feels so abstract.
Yeah, it might seem abstract at first, but think about the forces that shape your life, even the ones you can't see or touch.
Okay.
So, for example, the values that you were raised with, cultural norms that you've absorbed, even the laws of physics. All these things are, in a sense, expressions of an underlying principle.
Right.
A kind of Tao that shapes our reality.
That makes sense. So then how does Heshang Gong suggest we live in harmony with this formless Tao? If it's beyond definition, how do we even begin to align ourselves with it?
That's the core question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And his answer points us toward Wu Wei.
Okay.
Now, often translated as non-action.
Right.
Which can easily be misunderstood as just being passive.
Yeah, I was going to say, they can't be just sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly. It can't be just doing nothing. There has to be more to it.
Right.
So Wu Wei is more about aligning your actions with the natural flow of the Tao.
Okay.
It's about acting effortlessly without forcing things. Being in tune with that natural order. Much like a surfer riding a wave.
Okay.
And He Shanggong uses an analogy from the Tao Te Ching to illustrate this water.
Ah, yes. The Tao Te Ching talks about water being like the ultimate model for living in accordance with the Tao. So what insights does He Shanggong offer on this analogy?
He elaborates beautifully on water's adaptability and yielding nature. So it doesn't resist obstacles, but flows around them, finding its way to the sea effortlessly.
Okay.
Water can be powerful enough to carve canyons.
Wow.
And yet gentle enough to nourish a tiny sprout.
Wow.
So how does that reflect on our own lives?
Right.
Is there wisdom to be found in yielding rather than always pushing forward?
That's a powerful question. I find myself pushing against the current, often, trying to force things to go my way. Maybe I need to learn to embrace a little more of that water-like adaptability.
Yeah.
But how do we actually put this into practice? How do we find those moments where we're fighting the flow instead of going with it?
Well, it starts with awareness. Noticing those areas in your life where you're clinging to a specific outcome.
Okay.
Resisting change, trying to control every little detail.
Oh, yeah.
Those are signs that you might be a little out of sync with Wei Wei.
Those are all too familiar feelings. Maybe we all need to tap into our inner water a little more often.
Yeah.
So living in harmony with the Tao goes beyond Wu Wei, right?
Absolutely.
Heshang Gong also emphasizes the importance of cultivating certain virtues.
Mm-hmm.
So what are those, and how do they connect with this idea of Wu Wei?
You're exactly right. Cultivating these inner virtues is key. And He Shanggong points to virtues like humility.
Okay.
Simplicity, contentment as being essential for aligning with the Tao.
Yeah.
These aren't always the qualities that we celebrate in today's world, are they?
Not exactly. Our culture tends to emphasize ambition achievement, the pursuit of more.
Right.
So these virtues you're mentioning sound almost passive, at least on the surface. But I'm sensing there's a deeper layer here.
Always deeper layers in Taoism.
Yeah.
Right. Let's take humility, for example.
Okay.
He Shanggong points to lines from the Tao Te Ching like, he who knows contentment is rich. But this isn't about material riches. It's about that inner richness that comes from being satisfied with what one has.
That's powerful. That's such a counterpoint to the messages we're constantly bombarded with. Everywhere we turn, we need more to be happy. A bigger house, a fancier car, the latest gadget. It's refreshing to consider a different perspective.
Exactly. And he goes further, advocating for simplicity, not just in possessions, but in our overall approach to life. He highlights the line, the sage wears coarse clothes but carries jade within.
Oh, I like that one.
Beautiful image, isn't it? Outwardly unassuming,
Yeah.
yet possessing inner worth.
It reminds me that true value isn't about outward appearances or what we own, but what we cultivate within ourselves. Do you think that cultivating these inner qualities, humility, contentment, simplicity, makes it easier to actually practice Wu Wei?
I think there's a beautiful interplay there.
Yeah.
When we let go of ego, when we find contentment in what we have, it naturally becomes easier to align with the flow,
Right.
to act without force or resistance.
Makes sense. So how does He Shanggong apply these Taoist principles to the realm of leadership and governance?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm really curious to hear his perspective on what it means to lead with Tao.
Well, he believes that the ideal ruler embodies the Tao,
Okay.
not by imposing their will, but by acting in accordance with a natural order.
Interesting.
So instead of dictating every detail, they govern by example, inspiring others to follow the path of virtue. He even comments on the famous line, "The best way to rule is to leave the people alone."
Leave the people alone. That doesn't sound very proactive for a leader.
Right.
What does he really mean by that?
It's not about neglecting the people,
Okay.
but it's about trusting their innate wisdom and allowing them to flourish without unnecessary interference. It's about creating the conditions for harmony and prosperity to emerge naturally, not forcing it from the top down.
Wow. So imagine a leader who prioritizes the well-being of the people above their own personal gain.
Exactly.
That's a radical concept, especially in today's world.
It is.
But it makes you wonder what would happen if more leaders, not just in politics, but in all areas of life, adopted this approach. What if we all tried to lead with that kind of humility and trust?
It's a compelling question, isn't it?
Right.
Whether it's a manager at work,
Right.
a parent, a community leader, this idea of leading by embodying the Tao, by fostering harmony and trust, it seems relevant across all aspects of life.
So as we delve into the final part of our deep dive, I'm curious what key takeaways from Heshang Gong's commentary resonate most strongly with you. What insights do you think we can carry with us into our modern lives?
Well, it's amazing how these ancient teachings still feel so relevant today, isn't it?
Yeah.
His emphasis on inner peace over external validation, on simplicity over material acquisition,
Right.
on harmony with nature. These are all principles that can guide us toward a more fulfilling life, even amidst the chaos of the modern world. What speaks most strongly to you?
I think what I find particularly fascinating is how he connects the personal and the political. He shows us how cultivating inner virtues can ripple outwards, creating a more harmonious society, and how a leader who embodies the Tao can cultivate a thriving and peaceful world. It's a vision of interconnectedness and balance that feels especially potent in our increasingly polarized times.
Absolutely. It really highlights how our individual actions matter.
Yeah.
Cultivating inner peace and virtue isn't just a selfish pursuit, it's a contribution to a better world.
Right.
It's about recognizing that interconnectedness.
Yeah.
You mentioned how our inner state can influence the world around us.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the core concept of Tao.
Okay.
We've discussed its paradoxical nature, its formlessness. It makes you wonder if the Tao is truly nameless and formless. How can we even begin to grasp it?
Right. It's a question that has me thinking, if we can't define it, can't pin it down, how do we connect with this elusive Tao?
It's a question that invites us to go beyond intellectual understanding. Perhaps we can't grasp the Tao directly through words and concepts. So Heshang Gong suggests that the Tao reveals itself through its manifestations in the world. So by observing the natural world, by noticing the interconnectedness of everything, we start to see the Tao at work, even if we can't fully grasp it conceptually.
Yes. It's like the saying, you can't see the wind, but you can see the trees bending.
Right.
By paying attention, by being present in our lives and in the world around us, we begin to perceive the subtle ways the Tao is always at play.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. It's a journey of discovery, an ongoing process of attunement and alignment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a journey that begins with the willingness to let go of fixed ideas
Right.
and embrace the mystery.
Well said. We've only just scratched the surface of Heshang Gong's commentary today, and I feel like there's a whole universe of wisdom within the Tao Te Ching still waiting to be explored.
There's always more to learn, always deeper layers to uncover.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of these ancient texts. They offer a lifetime of insight and guidance. It's been a pleasure exploring them with you today.
The pleasure was all mine. A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise and insights. And to you, our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Taoism according to He Shanggong. We hope it sparked your curiosity and left you with something to ponder. Until next time, keep diving deep.